All right, well, guys, welcome to the Way It Is podcast.
The Way It Is.
Episode number 2. This one is sponsored by Bods by Dennis. With sluggish, overweight, things, brain volume, so forth and so on. Give Dennis Thomas a call. He'll hook you up with a
Never live it down.
personal exercise plan and diet plan and get you back in shape to attack broke scales just as quick as possible. So that's our sponsor for this podcast. I have here in the studio Mr. Sean Brazill, Mr. Jim Foley. Started you, Jim. How many years in the scale industry?
39. Coming up on 40. Yeah.
A good chunk of that has been, let's just go with the high-end technical side of the business, correct?
Yes. I'd say closer to 25 years has been spent in the systems and automation, that sort of thing.
Okay. Mr. Sean Brazill.
Yes, sir.
How many years in the scale business? And before that, what did you do?
So just a hair over 15 years. Prior to this, actually started at a engineering firm in high school. I actually started when I was 17, started cleaning coolant tanks, and pretty much once I turned 18, they migrated me into a mechanical engineering position and worked there for four-ish years, and 2008 hit, and we all know what happened there. So
yes.
Luckily but Fort Wayne at that time had a systems guy that they could just had left and was needing someone to fill that spot. So kind of you fell right into it. So
okay. We got this thing we keep hearing, engineered solutions, right? Jim, start with you again. Just give me a snippet of what does engineered solutions mean? What's it stand for? Just we'll dig into this as we go along. But from your perspective, give me a 10 to 15 second snippet. What does it mean?
Engineered Solutions is a brand name, essentially, and it is our brand name. And that name is, as it suggests, something that we would use to describe the services and products that we intend to provide within that name brand, such as automation, PLC type machine controls, and everything associated with that, using engineering practices, techniques, and that sort of thing to accomplish those ends.
Okay. Sean, your take on that, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, right in line there. I think the best way to look at it is engineered solutions. We're looking at it in an application that's in entirety, right? Typically in the past, it's been, how do we integrate a scale into this? Whereas we want to approach it from, how do we handle this whole entire process?
Okay. Up until this point, and it obviously we've done some engineering work prior to this, but up until this point, it was always, how do we integrate our equipment into a system that is already in place? And now we're looking even to, how do we provide the system?
Correct. That's the idea.
Okay. Yeah. Now, question for both of you, either one of you take it. What is the difference between the engineering solutions and the systems group that we currently have? I have my thoughts on it. I see, so let me, I guess, seed it, and you guys take it from here. I see our systems group, their strength is data handling. Okay. PC-based applications and data handling. What do you guys see? What's the difference? What do you think? What's the difference?
I'd agree with that. I'd say that they're more geared towards PC-based applications, data collection systems, specifically truck scale data collection, such as ScaleSoft, so forth and so on. That's where they're more geared to operate. So they're living in the web interface world, they doing SQL database backends, that sort of thing. And then they do, of course, the DD applications, which kind of falls right in line with that, because it is typically data collection packages that they're doing for that as well.
Yeah. Agreed on that?
Yeah.
You're seeing it.
Yeah, I think though, really get down into it, the biggest thing is, say, what's driving the application? Is it software, or is it, use the term automation, or is it more a hardware-driven system, right?
Okay.
You guys hit it on the head, where systems is a software back, right? I mean, it's lots of operator interaction, lots of data collection, a lot of data entry. Engineered solutions could be a fully automated system that you just hit start, and it runs a thing 10,000 times until they hit stop. So it's kind of what's the primary drive.
And that's the idea about engineered, is that it's all encompassing. It can be virtually anything. It could be a semi-automated process, or it could be something like Sean said, that's fully automated, that you start a button and you walk away, and that's it. It runs by itself from here on out.
Now, both of you guys have a considerable amount of experience on programmable scale indicators. And obviously, we already have the systems group that has a considerable amount of experience on software development, PC-based applications. Now, the new guy in town for us would be the PLC, Programmable Logic Controller. And so we're going down that road, integrating that in. Jim, you said this many times, that engineered solutions is not just a PLC. In other words, you got to look at the application, and a programmable weight indicator may be the way to go. But the question I want to ask you is, out of curiosity, what do you guys see as the difference? And maybe Sean, you take this one since Jim took the last one.
Yeah.
And then we'll kick it over to Jim. What do you see as the difference between using a programmable indicator versus a PLC?
The biggest thing that you look at is, most of the stuff that's out there, there's a limit to what it is capable of, right? I mean, if we look at some inputs and outputs, things like that, multiple scales, there's a cap on that, whereas PLC systems and everything, whether it is a local input-output module that goes on there, or it's remote I/O modules that go throughout the network or anything, it handles the hardware level that a programmable indicator does very well, right? Scales are great at being scales, weight indicators.
And at a certain amount of
Right. And, that's a big thing, is when you need to look at future expansion, or if you have a lot of push buttons, a lot of outputs, things like that, you're going to fill up your programmable indicator pretty quick. Whereas some PLCs, you can have thousands of input and outputs.
So with a programmable indicator, it's very robust at what it does, and it does it very, very well.
Yes.
But when it comes to scalability, that's where maybe the PLC comes in, because it gives us some more options of scalability.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, Jim, sorry. No problem. They want to tap onto that.
No, I think that, as we've said, scale indicators are designed purposefully to be scale indicators. That's what they do. They work with load cells. They work as a scale. That's their primary function. Anything outside of that is secondary functionality.
Right.
Okay. As far as a PLC is concerned, they are designed specifically to handle I/O and automation tasks. That's what they do. So that's really the big difference in them. It's the specialty functionality that each one of them provides. And Sean said, its scale indicators do cap out. They do have a limit, because the programmability is basically a subset of another language that basically has a limitation on what it can and cannot do.
Okay, so I think we can all agree that the programmable scale indicator definitely, absolutely has its place in this. The PLC has its place, and then the PC-based applications that systems has also in place. And really, there might be certain situations where all three of those are playing on the same field, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough on that. We want to get deeper on some projects that you guys have done, and then we also want to talk about it. I'm a custom, and I have something I want to automate or batch control or something like that. How does this whole process work? So we'll get to that here in just a bit. On the PLC side of it, now that's kind of an area that you guys have a lot of experience in dabbling, but for our company as a whole, we have. So we're now slowly, piece by piece, starting to ramp up with that. For a scale technician that is looking to kind of start down this path on SID, and even for our customers training-wise, our folks come in on the basic scale training. They go through a mentorship program. All of our people do, but there's some of the guys that some of the folks that start to, they want to get into the PLC side. So generally what we do with them is we bring them in for an advanced communications class. That's where we get into Ethernet, serial Ethernet converters, actual Ethernet communications, Ethernet IP, so forth and so on. And then we also will want to bring them in again for another class. And that's where we kind of get into the automation. So how does a relay work? How do I wire a relay into a PLC module? Is it syncing or source? That type of stuff. Then finally is where we'll bring them in for the PLC class, where we actually start to teach them how to program with ladder logic and to handle data back and forth between scale indicators. So we have the training tools in place. Shooting from the hip, 100% here. What do you guys see additionally that we might need training-wise? And maybe we don't. Maybe we just need to continue to do what we're doing. But do you look down the road 4 or 5 years from now as this grows and grows and say, hey, this is what we think we need to add into this training-wise? Or do we just continue down this road we're rolling? What do you think?
It's always good to add additional arrows to your quiver. There's no question about that. And I don't think you ever stop. I think you're continually growing and advancing and maturing in whatever field or profession that you're doing. With that could be potentially new PLCs, new technology with PLCs or PACs, which is the programmable automation controllers, different types of devices, indicators and sensors, and all hosts of different things that would comprise a system, an automation project, if you will. So I think that, it's okay to continue on where we are right now with the idea that that could change, or that, we may be enhancing that or adding some things to that as we go.
Yeah, that's the same spot for your at.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is, you want to lay the groundwork and just get the basics down, right? I think it's one of those things too that, just like anything, geographically, regionally, whatever, there's going to be a difference between what we do, right? I look at the projects I've done and I've looked at the projects that Jim does. Yes, it's still a PLC backend, but vastly different applications, right? So, I think, again, piggyback off what Jim said there, where, as things are introduced, or, we bring on technicians that, bring up something like fiber, like you and I have talked about that, hey, okay, let's develop out that training and everything. And I think it's going to be one thing that it's going to continue to grow just based on what continues to come out.
Yeah, I see this. Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. 20 years ago, it was, I need a weight. Give you a weight with a scale.
Yeah.
And now it's, I can get a weight, or I can get a weight a lot of different places. Now it's, what can we do with the weight?
It's a peripheral device now. It's just like anything else. It's a weight. It's an input
Data
of some sort used in a process to perform some function or another.
15, 20 years down the road, and the automation and the data handling, what can you do with this weight? And it's got to change dramatically.
Yeah.
So obviously we have to, continue to stay up with it on the training. I want to ask you about some of the projects that you've done, but do this for me. Jim, we'll start with you, and then Sean, if I'm a customer, okay, and I hear engineered solutions, I kind of, especially if I'm listening to this podcast, I maybe now kind of have a fundamental understanding of what it is. But I'm a customer, and I have something that I know, it's a process that I know could be done much more efficiently. And we'll stick for now with it's a weight-based process, or weight is involved in it.
Sure.
Okay? Walk me through the steps, just generically, on what has to take place from, I need to automate this, I need to make this more efficient. What are the steps from there up to actually automating it? And now it's automated.
Right. My approach has always been that from 9 times out of 10, it's going to require a site visit. Okay, so I'm going to go out and talk to the client, gather some information from them, talk to them about what the process is, what kind of pain points they may be experiencing with this process, what do you like about it, what don't you like about it. Try to glean as much information as I can from them and any others that are involved in that conversation.
Engineering visit.
Correct. A site visit evaluation. And then I'm going to want to spend some time with this unit or this machine or whatever it is that we're looking at. Try to spend some time with it on your own, taking some notes, some pictures, and maybe even looking at it while it's in operation, talking to the operators, basically just trying to compile a profile of this particular application, to take it back to the home office, if you will, and then put some thought to it and see what is available, what we can do.
That's where the engineering comes in, right? We need some time we've seen but now we need some time where it's quiet to think through this and actually engineer out so
That's correct.
that's the time at the office. Sean, so far, if we use the Harris Group as an example, we've got the site visit involved, sitting and watching the existing equipment work.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, I mean, Jim is right on that.
I'm back at the office. Okay, so then we got some quiet time at the office to actually engineer this out. Jim, go ahead, sir. From there, what's the next?
Once a process has been determined, once we've decided, okay, we have a potential solution for this, then we would present that to the client. So it's like
Presentation.
this is what we suggest, this is what we offer, this particular version of it, this all subject to change, but this is what we're thinking would be a good fit for you. And if they like it, then we would proceed on with the quotation process.
Yeah. So then once it's quoted, obviously when the bid's accepted, the quote's accepted, then that's when the actual...
Yeah, the work would begin. Yeah, there's design phase, the engineering, that sort of thing. Parts, ordering all the fun stuff.
That has to be put together. And then, then there's a certain amount of time, obviously, that for installation and then actually prove it out. Now, let's be, and I'm going to flip to you real quick, Sean, but give me 1 second. I think we always buzz about turnkey solutions. There's nothing actually always really turnkey. In other words, once you get this done and you get it installed, there's always tweaks and tunes that have to be made, correct? So there's got to, it's not always just, throw it in and wire it up and everything else works. Walk away from it.
And the reason that is because, once again, it's engineered. It's an application pointed at a specific problem to solve that problem. And so there's going to be a little bit of tweaking that's involved and variables in that you're going to have to deal with, during commissioning.
Fair enough. Sean,
Yes, sir.
I think you agree.
Oh, yeah.
The same process. So start with you, sir. What would be, give us a real world application where you've done this. Give us a job.
Yeah, so the first one that jumps to my mind is we had a customer that on a packing line, they're running 600-700 boxes, and what they were doing is they wanted to start capturing the weight
Of each box.
in motion, everything. So what they had is they had a section of conveyor, and I think this is a great example with talking about how Jim's talking about tweaks and things like that, because we took a section of conveyor, we integrated some load cells in between the legs and the conveyor, everything working fine, scale working great. And what we found was the type of conveyor system that they were using, each, 3-foot section of conveyor had its own controller. And what would happen is there was photo eyes every 3 foot. So if there was not a package for 10 seconds, the conveyor would shut off. So just like Jim said, we get on site, hey, we proved it out, everything's working great, reject arms, all this different stuff. And then as soon as we put it in, the whole entire system just shut down because no one was aware that we were having to not only send a signal upstream to say, hey, I'm ready for the next package, we also had to read the signal downstream.
Make sure you're still
Right. So, it's one of those where when you watch the operation, the package just comes up to a photo eye, it stops. There's a DD involved, so we had the system group there. It is handling all the data acquisition, and then it gives me a good or bad, and then we continue on. The problem is when you start getting product downstream, what would happen is if we're sitting on the scale and we don't have a signal yet, it stops at the previous photo eye. The next box stops at the previous photo eye. And then what has to happen is it has to index that whole system through there. So that was 3 days of, okay, this and then this and then this. And eventually we got it taken care of. But, that's a prime example where, exactly what Jim said, right? Worked with the operators. That's the biggest thing is what are they doing? Right. There's tons of supervisors.
Go back to the operators most of the time.
They have insight that the other folks do not.
Yeah.
They know how this thing works real world.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll give you some valuable information that could save you time and heartache.
Yeah, and that's what, on that application, that's what the guy brought up. He goes, so when we're backed up at the printer because of labels, you need to stop feeding them. Which everybody's like, so.
And bought an engineered solution that yes, there was a hiccup at commissioning, but was able to work through it and take care of that customer. Jim, I want to go to you with been asked about if you have an example of a project that you worked on. But before I do that, I'm going to have a quick side the street here. A lot of industrial applications, well, really all kinds of applications, but really industrials, we agree are weight-based. There's weight involved in it somehow. And you, Jim, you and Sean both said that weight has become an input. Temperatures, there's all these different inputs coming in that have to be processed by something, a PLC, PAC, whatever. And weight is one of those inputs, okay? There's a lot of other automation companies out there that do this type of stuff. Where would we shine? Because I guess maybe this is more of a statement, partially a question asking for your input. If we can mix our expertise in weighing, because a lot of automation companies, they don't understand weighing like we do. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. I'd say so.
Okay, because it's more than just bolting load cells to something. Correct. Anybody can bolt a load cell to something, but you knowing the dynamics of how that load cell works because of our expertise in weighing. So, and again, it's maybe more of a statement than is a question, but can we agree that we're experts in weighing? And if we mix our expertise in weighing with an expertise in automation, now you're really going to have a top-notch product, because now it's not an automation product that we've just locked some load cells or we know weighing just as well as automation. Is that a fair statement, or do we need to tear that down about that?
No, I think that's fair. That's the way I would look at it.
If I'm a custom and I need an automated system that is going to be using weight, we would be the people to turn to for that. Is that Dick?
I think that's a fair statement, because in a lot of cases, especially, if our salespeople are very personable people and they're in tune with their clients and they're talking to them quite a bit, so they know what's going on with some of these applications. It falls right into their hands to know that we are capable of doing some of these things, and they would love nothing more than to be able, for one company, a one-stop shop type mentality, to say, okay, you guys can handle the scales, you can do the automation too. Fantastic.
We have a great reputation when it comes in the weighing industry. We have a great reputation. I mean, you can't argue that. And so you take that great reputation with weighing technology or weighing, and you integrate it or mix it with the automation side of it, and you really have something.
Talk about real world examples. I mean, we had that exact scenario where an engineering firm years ago reached out to us, because in their bid package, all they knew was they needed a scale. So all they were saying was floor scale. We need a floor scale. Great. We go there, we talk to them about a Clydesdale, and they're going through, and as we were sitting there talking, eventually the guy's like, yeah, do you make one of those really, really tiny? And we were like, oh, you mean like a bench scale? And so in his mind, the only knowledge he knew was, one, I need a scale, and it's going to sit on the floor.
And it needs to be this big.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Engineering firms and automation companies, like you said, they're looking at scales as a commodity, right? They're told, I need a floor scale that's 4 foot by 4 foot and goes up to 5,000 pounds. They're going to search online and
Cheapest one they can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because same just like Jim said earlier, because all they need is a weight point. They don't need, they're not understanding that, is this a laboratory environment or is it a scrapyard? Sure. They don't know that side of it. So.
They don't know the intricacies.
And so that when the system doesn't work, we get called in.
Right.
So we look at it as, wait a minute, maybe we can just take care of everything. All of it. I keep pushing you off, Jim. If you would, give us an example of a system, that engineered solution that you have.
Okay. Recently. The last, the one that I'm working on right now that we're still in process, and it's a bulk cement loadout.
Okay.
2 silos, 1 truck scale. And the way this all started out was through the sale of a truck scale. Okay. These, the company that was hired to do the electrical portion of this, which was a local electric company outfit, and an automation company working together to provide the controls for this machine. They needed scale, so we were brought into that. And as we were discussing the project, it was brought up a number of times just on whose responsibilities would be what. And I chimed in and said, well, we can handle the automation part of the filling process. They said, great, can you do Ethernet IP? I said, I sure can. He goes, it sounds fantastic. He said, we'll put the PLC in and you take over for the controls. So the really interesting thing about this project is that I'm taking care of all the logic, all of the filling process, and the receiving process by using nothing more than Ethernet IP commands and a mapping, Ethernet IP mapping.
And what type of hardware are you using, Joe, to do this?
I'm basically, right now I'm using an Opto 22 PAC as a gateway, as an Ethernet IP gateway. It also is running all the logic for the filling process. The only thing is that it's not actually talking to discrete I/O. It's not looking at discrete outputs and inputs. I'm actually looking at inputs and outputs from an Ethernet IP map.
So basically, their existing PLC that already is doing it's the one that's opening the sliding gates.
Correct. It's a one-for-one system. So basically, you give it an input, it turns on an output. That's all it does. And that's all it does. The logic end is handled on our side.
So their existing PLC is basically just an Ethernet IP or client, as you call it, a client. And your Opto 22 is actually handling everything and just simply passing a command to say, open this gate or close this gate. Okay, fair enough. We better take a quick commercial break and hear from our sponsor, Bonds by Dennis.
Bonds by Dennis.
We're back with our podcast the way it is, episode number 2, joined here once again by Sean Brazill and Jim Foley, and got a couple more things that we kind of dovetail on this. Why should they choose Brechbuhler as their provider for automation? And what we said is look, we're experts on the weighing side of it, and generally a lot of these applications, weight is an input that's needed. So we're going to give you a good quality scale. We're going to provide you with a good quality scale. It's got to do what it needs to do for the application. Mm-hmm. You guys tell me if I'm off track here. We get asked, well, we're a scale company. Why are we going down this road? And that's why I tell folks, been in the scale business for 26 years. When I started at the Canton shop, there were still a lot of scale techs that had hired in the late 60s or 70s. And there were still a ton of mechanical scale. I mean, all of us had this conversation before. In fact, the majority of the scales in the Canton service area were mechanical scales. And those scales worked excellent. They were great scales. And the scale techs that hired in the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s, a lot of those scales, and they saw no need to change. In all fairness to them, they were great scales. Mm-hmm. And there really was no need to change, except if we hadn't have changed and started going after the electronic scales, now the digital scales, we probably would be out of business, because our competitors are selling electronic scales, don't require a pit. Again, mechanical scales but if we would have camped on that, we would have been out of business. And it's the same thing with the technology. You wind the clock back, let's say 20 years ago, putting a scoreboard on the scale was something. Not everybody had scoreboards. Now,
Not everyone could do it.
right.
But in fact,
Now, a lot of our branches, they shared an electronic. The smaller branches would share an electronic tech, because all the technicians were mechanical, and you might add 1 or 2 electronic techs. Now that is all changed. Everybody has to be electronic tech, and the scales, almost every scale that is sold anymore, with the exception of maybe some of your bench and floor scales, there's some sort of peripheral device that's communicating with something anymore. So what we're doing with this is we're looking, 5-10 years down the road. I mean, the technology is already being tested. Piezoelectric technology, being able to measure weight with piezoelectric resonant frequency. And so, who knows, 10, 15 years from now, a floor scale may just be a mat you roll out on the floor, right? It's an electric mat. You have to constantly keep up with the times and look at, 5-10 years down the road. So that the engineered solutions is part of that. It's part of our company, and looking down the road 5-10 years from now, and saying, hey, we have to keep up with this. Yep. So, and we have scale people, or some of the sharpest people you're going to meet. The reason is because you have to be able to swing between so many different disciplines on a day-to-day basis. So we have the intelligence. I think we can agree on that. Correct. And we definitely have the go-getter attitude to do this type of work. Anything you guys want to add on that, or they covered okay? So it's on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, I mean, you kind of hit it talking about competitors is, you know, like we talked about 20 years ago, right? There was GSE, Rice Lake, Electronics, Mettler were the scale company, you know, indicators specifically. You know, so when we look at engineered solutions, you know, nowadays our biggest competitor is the internet. So
Yes.
it is going more and more towards that. And again, it kind of goes back to the conversation where right tool for the right job kind of thing. But, you know, being able to provide the engineered solutions or systems or whatever that is, you know, we're not just, we have scales, you know, like you said, so does Rubbermaid now. I mean, it adds,
That's a fair point.
you know, so that's the thing is making sure that we're constantly staying ahead of it, staying at the forefront of it, and not being comfortable is a big part of it. Where, you know, like I said, the fiber optic conversation you and I have had where, you know, we never would have thought to try that, but hey, let's give it a shot, and now see it's a viable thing. So
See, you know, that way we have, right. That's where, I think that's definitely the direction we're trying to go with this is looking 5-10 years and making sure that we're future proofing. Jim, I know you're going to say yes on this because you've discussed this heavily before. Do you see us having some standard offerings on the engineered solution side? I know there's nothing that's ever 100% standard. Okay, so everything always needs tweaked and tuned for the application. But do you see some standardized offerings, a base package?
I do. I think there's a few things that we need to go after right off the bat. Truck scales are our bread and butter. That's our primary targeted product line.
Okay.
So I would say some sort of a loadout system would make a lot of sense, whether it be, you know, loss in weight, you know, from a, you know, hopper system or directly onto a truck scale. I think that would probably make a lot of sense. And from there, you know, I would probably want to get some consensus from the branches to try to find out what type of industries they serve and how we could better serve those industries, which could be any number of different products that we potentially get involved into.
Yeah.
But right off the bat, a truck scale application would make sense.
I know what Sean's going to say, so I'm going to take a guess and lob it out there and see if I'm right. Sean is going to say a check weighing application. Or maybe not.
yeah, I would say 50-50. You know, again, that's I look, you know, specifically out of the region that I'm on, where, you know, most commonly is a lot of checkweigher systems. I mean, we've got 4 in-motion checkweighers of some sort going on. You know, I think the thing, you know, looking at what Jim said with a loadout system, you know, and when you boil down all of our applications, there's really only a handful of types of applications, right? If you have a loadout system, and we do the vibratory feeder systems out of Fort Wayne, a truck scale loadout system is just that on steroids. But the logic there and everything is very, very similar. Right? I mean, we're opening gates, we're turning on vibratory feeders, and we're shutting off at a target weight. So, you know, it is one of those things that, say, very baseline, we could have the, you know, some standard offerings, and then, you know, that way we have a starting point too, especially when we look at, you know, technicians wanting to come up and start tackling this themselves.
Right.
Hey, here's a
Base product that we're going to train and work on. And then from there, each application has to be engineered out as, you know, and no two are going to be the same, but you have at least a baseline. Is that fair?
I'd say so. So I think it just depends on where you come from. Sean comes from an area where he sees a lot of checkweighers. Mm-hmm. In my days in the petrochemical industry, I saw a lot of drum and tote fillers. Okay, so I would say I could have very well said, if we were in Houston, Texas, and that was one of our big bread and butter items, I might have said truck scale or drum fillers, tote fillers. So it really just depends. But I do think that the checkweigher would be a viable application also, because you're going to see a lot of that in just about any industry. Yeah. A lot of industries are going to have some of that.
Loadout, like, you know, especially your time near Columbus and stuff, a lot of ag. So there's a lot of loadouts, and then that also goes into the, you know, the cement, and then
Of all different types of industries and products, whether it be grain or coal or petroleum coke or any number of different things that they load into trucks and trains.
One last thing, you give me a real world application where you've done it. A lot of our customers, they're wanting to be able to remotely access something. And we'll just go with, for now, a automated system. They want to be able to remotely access or remotely monitor or remotely view. Sean, starting to you, then flip to Jim. What do we got available to do that? And if you haven't done it, that's fine. Just ask it. Have you had to do that before? And give me a quick rundown on.
Well, yeah, I think just a quick little recap there that, a lot of HMIs and I know the Opto 22 system, they have two options where you can either do a web application or they have a mobile application built into it. I know the one that you had showed me that Chris had written, right? You can pull it up on your iPad. And I think that's the thing is, so when we go through, like, for instance, that in-motion checkware, again, there's a whole lot of things going on there because there's a systems application, there's an engineer solution going on. But what we've got is a part of the web application where they have all of the database management. They are able to, using some web calls and everything, to see the status of all the I/O and what's currently on, what's currently off. So even though it's not
Remote.
Yeah. So even though it's not a mirror image of what's shown on the PLC system, we're able to take that data, with the help of our systems group and manipulate that so it's readily available.
Before you flip to Jim, you said something critical. The systems group.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of strength there in data handling. So they gather marrying.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of encompasses everything we've been talking about because this application, there's tons of I/O that's going on, right? We're not only reading the inputs and outputs of the system, but we also have to go through and handle the inputs and outputs from the DD. So offloading that hardware responsibility from the DD. So the DD system, they're scanning an RFID badge, a barcode from the part data handling part. Right. So for the PLC side, like I said, we send them an input and then they read it and say, hey, yeah, you're good or bad. And then all the I/O is handled from the PLC, so we're not bogging down the DD side.
Let the DD do what the DD does.
Yep, exactly.
Jim, real world application where you've had to do that, remote viewing or remote access.
One of the recent ones is Nexia. That's exactly what Nexia does.
Remote viewing and remote cells.
It's the same exact thing entirely. It's something that lives in cloud, an application, a database backend, whatever that might be. That might allow you to access remotely different devices out in the field. In that case, scale indicators. But one of the latest interactions I had with that was with Echelon, which is the digital load cell platform that I've been working on. So Echelon is capable of communicating through the web its information, diagnostics and wake data.
Give me a quick rundown of how it works. Obviously, somewhere is a web server that whoever wants to see the data, they're going to point to that web server. But the scale or the load cells in this case are just simply connected up to it, and they're just sitting.
They're just sitting like a node on the network. As long as wherever they're sitting has security policies that allows you to get through.
Punch a hole through it.
Correct. And there's always issues that you got to fight through there with that stuff. And there's ways around that as well. There's cellular gateways that can be installed. There's a lot of things that we can do to mitigate some of those types of issues. But the idea is to get communication on the network. There's an application in the cloud that's able to talk to that based on its IP address.
We've done this multiple times.
And we have done it. Yes. It's definitely nothing new. And there are some PLC manufacturers that have built-in web interfaces to allow you to access information that way as well. So I guess it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish, whether you're just wanting to look at status, like a SCADA type application where you're just wanting to see inputs and what's going on with a particular processor or system, or you're trying to glean some data, to capture some data from it and print reports, or you're actually trying to have some sort of control, above this system, which, that's a little sketchy.
Having the actual SCADA where you're actually controlling it.
Well, there's two parts to that. Yeah, there are some SCADA applications. Mostly they're just where you can view. Somebody can view a process or a tank, or a tank farm or something like this, where they're able to see, where their levels are.
Battery system.
Monitoring system, correct.
We're up against the time clock here, so the boss is going to be violently booting us all out of the studio. But I've got two very quick questions. I'll lob one of them at Jim and then one of them at Sean. Jim, we'll start with you. First question is, if I'm a salesperson okay, a scale salesperson, whether it is for Brechbuhler Scales or whether it is for one of the value scale dealers that VTech deals with. If I even think that I smell a possibility of an engineered solution or an automation thing, what do you want me to do? Who do you want me to reach out to?
Yeah, I think that you would reach out to me immediately, and let me know what that opportunity is. We would talk about that to find out if there's anything there, to make sure that, we're not, going on a wild hunt or wild goose chase, that sort of thing. 9 times out of 10, they're not, but you have to kind of weed through some of that stuff, and that comes through experience. It comes through here.
But don't hesitate to contact.
Absolutely.
And say, hey, this is what I was here, and this is what I think that I saw. Sean, if I am a newer technician coming into Brechbuhler Scales, and I'm thinking possibly making this a career, and I keep hearing about the automation side of the business, the engineered solutions, and I kind of think that that's the direction that I want to go. And again, you have to give me a real green answer. Just give me a 10,000. What would you as a manager say to this technician? What would you say, this is the path, or this is what I think you need to do if you want to down this?
I think that's the biggest thing is, when we look at stuff like that, where, people want to take that next step, it's, especially with this kind of stuff, we just have to try. Like I said, we've had technicians throughout the years that, have looked at the programmable indicators and like, yes, that's what I want to do. And then you sit them down in front of it and start training, and then they realize, like, yeah, that's not what I want to do.
It's just fine.
Right. And I think the benefit of, again, kind of be quick here, the engineered solutions is it's not one thing, right? I mean, you could have a guy that builds panels. You could have a guy that does HMIs. You have a guy that does PLCs. Maybe
very good with
that's right. That's the idea. There is
fabrication.
It has different individuals with different skill sets and backgrounds that can handle different aspects of a project, so that one person isn't chained down to the entire thing. That's going to be very important.
All right, guys. Well, I thank you for traveling 3 hours each to sit here with our podcast at 3.5.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Once again, I want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Dennis. Make sure to reach out to call him for a personalized training plan and diet plan, and it will turn you into a different person.
His cell phone is it? No.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
We'll see you on the next one.
All righty.